Evolution of a Nobody, Book 2, Chapters 12 and 13. The Breaking of Albert Lamarck. "Take one of these," Albert said, and took up a brown plastic tray with multiple spiral grooves in the center and sides radiating outwards. He handed one to Raziel and another to Liala, and then set the tray on 3 steel poles secured in front of a long glass guard. On the other side stood a number of old ladies in white aprons with simple gray dresses underneath and black nameplates over the left breast. All were wrinkled and had some degree of dourness about them, almost daring the students to make their day either better or worse. Just beyond the glass, before where the various old gray-haired women stood wearing hairnets and frowns, various substances sat which Liala looked at with a dubious eye. She sniffed the air. It was hot at least, but it smelled a little stale. "Mashed potatoes with gravy," Albert said, and the first and fattest of the old women slapped a scoop of white lumps into a small white bowl and then ladled some watery brown substance over the top, then handed it to Albert. "Next," she snapped. "Is this food? Are they really serious?" Liala asked herself. The stuff Albert's home had might not have been fresh, but it was at least prepared with as much care as could be given. This was one step removed from the slop her orphanage and school fed to pigs in their troughs. Same," Liala said, and with the noise of the wet plop from indifferently prepared food, she felt immediate regret. She kept her face blank for a moment as she looked down at the little bowl when it was offered from over the top of the glass. She took in more of the woman's face while reaching for the bowl and caught something familiar. Like the broken ones, in the mines or fields. It was hard not to recall her home in the old woman's face, and it was a mixed bag of emotions to do so. Some parts, the brilliant sky with its shifting colors and the changing seasons, the bright waters, the endless forests, and the celebration after every harvest, but the dark sides were not possible to ignore either. The wandering laborers of no home who struggled to find work. The miners who were never meant for a cave, or the field workers or laborers who were stooped by years of lack of care after efforts that brought them little but that day's bread. She felt that same sympathy all over again that she felt the first time she saw an old goblin that could no longer walk with his back straight from the years of heavy burdens. "Thank you, you look nice today," Liala said, and flashed the woman the brightest smile she could. For a moment the old woman blinked like she was snapping herself out of a trance. Her mouth moved in disbelief, like she couldn't believe she'd been spoken to. Liala took the bowl and set it down on the center of one of the spirals the same way she'd seen Albert do, and by the time the little tap noise of glass meeting plastic happened, the old woman smiled back and said, "Thank you. Have a nice day." The old woman returned the smile given by the angel, and they each moved on to the next person. Raziel was brash and cheerful. She didn't really pay mind to people, but every gesture was over the top. "I will have those green bean things," she said, putting one foot down and standing sideways to the server. She pointed her finger down like she was a warrior commanding a charge. "And then, those yellow seeds." Albert's face began to crack, his chest began to heave, and when he saw the demoness wink at him, he couldn't keep it back. He began to laugh at Raziel's antics. It snapped some of the staff out of their own zombified rote pace to look at the curiously energetic young woman and the laughing young man beside her. "Ra Isadora, that's corn." Raziel crossed her arms in front of her chest, gave him the most arrogant look she could muster, and said, "Are those not the parts that more corn grows from?" Yeah," he answered. "Then I'm right," she said. "Yellow seeds they are." When his laughter finally began to die down, he wiped his hand across his eyes to clear the tears from them and answered, I guess you are." A few of the staff, snapped from their doldrums by her antics, wore little smirks of their own. They made it through the line with soggy vegetables, lumpy mashed potatoes, and dried chicken with a slice of processed cheese over the top, which hadn't quite melted all the way, and from there Albert led them out of the brightly lit building and out to a large, open, grassy area with lots of stone tables. Large numbers of people mingled together in little isolated groups around various spots. Some didn't even seem to care for tables, having found the occasional tree to put their backs against to sit with friends. Albert inclined his head to the left. "Over there are the more popular girls, cheerleaders, athletes, and their boyfriends. If you want to have an easy time here, make friends with them." He inclined his head to the right. "Over there are the drama nerds, band members, things like that. I don't know about where you're from, but here Here, school is full of cliques. Some people can move between them, usually if they have a relative in one they're not a part of. But otherwise, he stopped in his tracks and looked once over each shoulder. I sit over there. Maybe it'll be no big deal because you're just shadowing me, but I'd advise you not to. Humph, the pair said at once, and with no other response forthcoming, he sat on the bench at the gray stone table. 2 more trays hit the stone slab, and then just as Albert was putting his spoon into the lumpy mashed potato, a 3rd followed. He looked up and saw Lisa sitting in front of him. Raziel glared at the girl with malignant hate, but the human girl, despite a moment of being shaken and staring around her, leaned forward and whispered, "You're Raziel, aren't you?" Raziel's face hardened and her eyes narrowed to a focus on the girl in front of her. "I knew you were smarter than you looked." Albert and Liala snapped their eyes toward the disguised demoness as soon as she gave up the secret. Their lips parted at once to object or protest until Raziel's hands fell to each of their knees on either side of her and gave a reassuring squeeze. "There's no point in pretending, is there?" Raziel asked pointedly and leaned toward the red-haired girl and her shimmering emerald-green eyes. She glanced around as covertly as she could, with only the smallest twitch to see if they were being watched or eavesdropped on. While the fact that Albert had 2 pretty girls with him drew definitive commentary, and many a wayward glance as rumors no doubt began to spread, his outcast status kept some distance from them at least, so she was able to whisper comfortably after seeing nothing amiss. The babble and noise of other cliques was substantial enough that no birds landed on the nearby branches, and nobody seemed inclined to approach the table. Students lounged around on the grass against the occasional tree or at other gray stone tables. Lisa's heart began to pound in her chest. She couldn't meet Raziel's baleful stare for long, the memory of the talon tracing over her face threatening to tear her open, the promise of being dropped from high in the sky to a quick and brutal end. Both were fresh in her mind. Still, she faked her confidence as best she could while her courage held and said, "I don't have to be that smart. You told me you had a sister. Now Albert shows up here with 2 girls who act very close to him. I've known him my whole life. I've never heard of Isadora or Isabella or the Blackworth family, which, by the way, has real edgelord goth topic vibes." "Hey, I like it," Raziel said, briefly distracted from the exposure. She crossed her arms in front of her chest. "It's like that family from the Hylarum game. The one with the secret society." Raziel trailed off when Albert started to crack a smile in spite of himself. "She's got a point. It's an obvious reference. I like it, but I'm a nerd, so—" Albert shrugged. Lisa rolled her eyes at his interjection. "So what happens now? Are you going to try to expose us?" Liala asked, leaning forward toward her. "You wouldn't do that. You're a good person at heart." "You're her sister. Can I have your real name?" Lisa asked. The warmth of the blue eyes was heart-melting. She felt like a child that had been caught about to do something bad, but was being comforted rather than scolded. The rapid pace of her heartbeat began to slow down, and this one she could look at directly and without fear. "Liala, if you want to know." Liala answered and reached across the stone table. Without thinking, Lisa took it. "It's a nice name. I won't say anything. I'd rather not die, and even if I said anything, who would believe me?" "What am I supposed to say?" Lisa snorted. "Oh, those 2 beautiful girls aren't real humans. I'd be locked up in a crazy house the same day." "Not for long you wouldn't be," Raziel said. Her stare was not even broken by a blink. "I won't say anything, I promise. I promise." She repeated herself again. "I'm sorry. I really am, and I'll do anything to make it right with you," she said, looking at neither of the 2 who sat beside Albert, but only at Albert himself. "Even if you could, how could I forget it?" Albert asked. "You made a choice, Lisa. Even if I forgive it, how am I supposed to just let it go like nothing happened?" Lisa thought it over, then lowered her head. "If I stood by while you were getting beaten up, would you really ever look at me the same way?" he asked. "No, I don't know," she answered, her eyes welling up. "But still, I want to make it up somehow." "I don't know what to tell you," Albert answered. "And it might not matter anyway. I may not be here for long. Things are different." Before he could explain just how, Lisa's mouth opened and she screamed, "Look out!" All the martial arts in the world were inadequate for the simple act of being ambushed from behind while seated at a stone table, particularly when unintentionally trapped by having others seated on either side of him. The basketball hit Albert hard in the back of the head, knocking his face forward a bit. The shock of the blow briefly stunning him, it rebounded away, and even before he looked, the who came immediately to mind. He turned his head to look, and there was Jason, standing there with a smug, shit-eating smile on his face about 20 yards away. For a brief moment, Albert was impressed. The shot hit him right in the center of the back of his head. "Sorry. It was an accident," Jason lied, and without even thinking about it, while others chuckled or laughed, Albert knew that the idiot would be believed. "Albert, are you all right?" The trio shouted as he stepped over the stone bench. He didn't answer. He turned around while they were still standing up, and he ran. Not away. He ran toward his smug, smiling tormentor. "Fight!" someone shouted, and Albert vaguely heard the others, the sea of students. But it was like static from an old television, mere white noise, background, meaningless. His arms pumped and his heart raced. All he could feel was an overwhelming sense of hatred, and the smug smile disappeared off of Jason's face. Ages of frustration boiled over as he ran, bellowing down on the young man. Raziel and Liala barely had time to realize the nature of his intent before the gap was closed, but their intent to rush to his aid died when he did the unexpected. Jason took a wide, crude, untaught swing toward Albert's face, only for Albert to drop with one leg back and hit Jason's solar plexus with the palm of his hand. And as the boy bent over and started to gasp, Albert spun on the forward heel to plant himself into a side stand and brought his other hand up to smash into Jason's nose, snapping the boy upright again and sending him falling onto his back. From there, Albert jumped over top of him, shouting, raging. He couldn't hear the cheering of "fight" anymore. He brought his hands down in open palm blows that avoided damaging his fingers, while under him Jason flailed and tried to rise or hit anything he could. Albert grabbed the young man's hair at the top of his head, yanked it back to tilt his face up, and then brought his fore and middle finger down in a V shape that dug both fingers into Jason's eyes. The tormentor screamed like a wounded beast and clawed at Albert's fingers. His cries became pleas that went on until Raziel and Liala reached him and pulled Albert back. "Albert is going to kill him. We probably shouldn't let him do that." Jason lay flat, breathing hard, crying, clutching at his eyes. "I can't see! I can't see!" Albert stopped yelling. He was breathing hard, still glaring hatefully at the defeated and broken, unfortunate Jason. His body began shaking in the aftermath of his adrenal rush, and only then, far too late, did a teacher come rushing outside. The teacher, Albert's teacher, she saw Jason, saw Albert, and paled. "I wonder what she's thinking. Maybe wishing she'd said something when she saw what he did to me before." He wondered. His glare shifted to her as her face paled when she beheld the damage to the writhing boy on the grass. "This is your fault, bitch," he thought while she pulled the broken boy into her lap when she knelt down beside him. "Let me see." "Move your hands," she shouted in a panic down at Jason and then turned her head away from Albert. "Someone go get the nurse," she cried as she forced the young man's hands away. Only then did Albert look around further and saw far less than cheerful faces in every direction, a mix of dismay, horror, and mute fascination. But the fun, that was over.